Hello everybody and welcome to the second SQLite tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to be talking about using SQLite to first create a database and then also create a table. So with that, let's go ahead and just get started. So first of all, in order to use SQLite, we have to import it. So we're going to go import SQLite 3. Now, luckily for us, creating a database with SQLite is incredibly simple. As you'll find in MySQL, for example, it's a little more involved, but with SQLite, it's super quick and easy. So first, to create a database, you just specify a connection to a non-existent database. So for us, we could say con, which is short for connection, is equal to SQLite3.connect, and then we specify the name of the database. We'll call this one tutorial.db. Now, generally in programming, as I've kind of mentioned already, but then as you'll see as we continue, we want to use the same sort of standards as everyone else. And generally when we do databases, you have con is for connection, and then C is for the cursor, which we're going to get into next. So the next step would be to specify the cursor, and that will be C equals con.cursor. Now, what are these? So the connection is literally just the connection to the database and all of the information within it. The cursor is the same for SQLite and MySQL. What the cursor is a lot like your mouse cursor, and you can think of it like that. You tell the cursor where to go, what to do, what to grab. You would tell the cursor, like, if you want to have everything from this file or tutorial, the cursor does this, it highlights it all, and it grabs it, it selects it. And you can think of the cursor in the database as something extremely similar. It's really where it gets kind of the name of itself. So that's that. If we run this right now, tutorial.db will be created. So to be the cleanest, we would do con.close here right at the end. So let's go ahead and run it really quick. And you should get this little warning, and then yeah, we'll save that. And then it pops up just for a split second. But then if we go to our source code here where we've been doing all the tutorials, here's a new database file. It doesn't really have anything, it's 0 bytes, but it is actually a database file and it's ready to be populated at least. And that's it. And then now if we want to reconnect to it, we just connect to an existing database, right? It's a lot like making files. So we can run that, and sure enough, like, it totally works just fine. We didn't need to, give a new name or anything different. It's just if the database already exists, great, it'll connect to it. If not, it'll just make the database. Now, the next thing that we want to do is create a table. So once we have a database, now we have a table. Now, creating tables requires a little more work and a little more thought needs to go into it. So with a table, you use SQL language basically to create it. Now, like I mentioned before, SQL is actually a programming language of its own. So if you learn SQL with Python, you could go to another language like Ruby or C++, and you still know SQL. So that's kind of nice. It's like regular expressions almost. So anyways, let's create this table. We'll make a function and we'll call it def create _ table. Empty parameters for now. And then here we use the cursor, so c.execute, and this is how we execute SQL. And now you put in the SQL that you want to execute. So we're going to do create in all caps, create table, and then let's just do it, call it example. Now, you'll notice in SQL queries that people use all caps for some stuff and then non-caps for other things. Generally, people are going to use all caps to denote SQL specific stuff and then non-all caps for other things. So create and table, these are SQL words, okay? They carry meaning and values with SQL. As opposed to example, well, that's just our table's name, okay? So that's kind of custom or whatever. And you can, capitalize like the first letter, but generally the syntax or the standards is going to be that people only do like all caps for SQL stuff. And that's going to help down the road if like you need help on your code or you're trying to look through your code and figure out how something works again, stuff like that. It's a lot easier if you keep it nice and structured like that. So anyways, we create table example, and then now we specify the columns in this. So the first column, we're just going to do the same questions that we asked before, if you recall. So the first column will be language. You just put the name of it right in there, and then you space and then give the data type. So again, this is a SQL thing, so varchar. And what varchar is it's just variable characters. So it can be like any length, any kind of type. It's just characters. You just throw them in. Varchar is like this all-encompassing, I don't know, wonder word. Next, we had another question, and that was the version. So we'll save that as a column. And version, we'll call this a real because it was like a float. And with SQLite, we call floats real numbers. Next, we had a skill level. And a skill level in SQLite will be just text. Okay, so we actually have 3 data types. Now, we could use the magical varchar in all of these types because basically everything's a varchar. But just to be, I don't know, a little more perfectionist, we will go ahead and use these specific data types. So once that's done, we've created the table, and that's all we really have to do. So now what we could do is we could run create_table. Now let's run this code once. And that's that. The table is now created. Now, what happens if we try to create this table again? Like, what if we leave this code here? You're going to get an error that looks like this. Operational error. That table already exists. So notably, you don't want to, remake the table every time. Now, there is some logic that you can do to be like, if table exists, create table. Otherwise, don't create the table. But really, what's the point of that? You just create the table once, run it, and don't worry about it again. So just do that and leave the unnecessary logic out of it. Now, that's that. In the next tutorial, we're going to be talking about inserting data into the database and a few other principles when inserting data. So stay tuned for that.